Hello and welcome to our latest webinar. My name is Austin Newbell and I work here in the marketing team at HUB24. Before we start, I just need to mention a few housekeeping items. The lines will remain muted throughout the presentation to prevent any background noise. Any questions submitted will be responded to after the session. Today we're joined by Natalie Yan-Chatonsky, founder and CEO of Full-Time Lives, and Tim Henry, owner of Aspire Planning. Nat and Tim are here to discuss the importance of engaging with pre-retiree and retiree clients on the non-financial side of what's next, following a significant work-life change. So without further ado, I'd like to hand over to Natalie and Tim.
Thank you, Austin, so much for that introduction. We're so pleased to be here at your retirement webinar. Tim and I have got so much to share with you over the next half hour. We've got lots of insights, stories to share, as well as our story of how we've been collaborating over the last couple of years. But before I dive into some of the insights that I have to share with you about pre-retirees and how they transition successfully to retirement, wanted to get Tim to just share a bit about himself and Aspire Planning.
Thanks, Nat. Nat and I have worked together for the last few years, and our business, Aspire Planning in Melbourne, the whole goals-based advice has become quite a trendy word in the last few years. But going back 4 or 5 years ago, we made a real step in our business to create an infrastructure where we could use programs to really tap into the dreams and aspirations of our clients. And we developed a program called the Dream Catcher Program, and worked really well for a certain type of client. We were intended to use it for all our clients, but it seemed the whole framework worked a lot better for families and people that were time poor. The retirees, it just wasn't quite answering or tapping into some of those elements that were important to them. And so we had this void there that we were really nailing it, that brief for a certain type of client. And until we met Nat a few years ago, and at that stage Nat was just pretty new into her journey with Full-Time Lives, and the last few years we've spent developing exactly that solution for that pre-retiree and retiree client, really helping them plan that aspect of their life. So the theory is we can just work with the financials in coming in behind that.
Yeah, it's been an amazing journey for both of us, I guess. And I guess I'll take a step I'll leap back to when I did first start working on Full-Time Lives, my business. It was when I started to talk to my parents about what were they going to do with filling their everyday lifestyles, not just when they were on holidays, but also what were they going to do to feel like they were connected to the community and were doing things where they felt useful. And it was then that I guess I realized, when I was looking around and talking to other people who transitioned to retirement, some more successfully than others, it became a bit of a personal quest to really try and understand, well, how do people successfully transition? How do you actually build up a new life that is really meaningful, where you're getting as much satisfaction as you get from your work as you do in life after full-time paid work or an extensive successful career? How do you continue to wake up every day feeling really excited about the day ahead of you, with a lot of interactions with people where you feel really valued? So it was really that point when I realized that actually this is actually a common thing that people are experiencing, that fear of the unknown. Of if you were to step away from work, even for a sabbatical, what would you do? How do you change your identity and change your lifestyle in a way that you're still really enjoying and thriving? How you get up and, instead of going to work every day, doing other activities. So I ended up, it wasn't planned, but I ended up interviewing several hundred people at various different stages of their journey, from full-time work, from very early days just thinking about it, right through to being in the mix of it all and just kind of dealing with all the uncertainty, right through to people who'd been a few years into retirement and thinking back to, well, if they'd had some help while they were still going through that transition period, what could have they done differently? And so many people who seemingly were leading really interesting lives that were very varied and very much connected to what makes them feel really great about themselves, inevitably that it would come out at some point in the interview where they would say, look, I fumbled around with figuring it out for myself. If only I had my future self to tell me what to do, or if there was some kind of network that I could tap into where I could hear the stories and learn from others who were a few steps ahead of me, then that would have been an amazing thing for me to have. And I so wish someone had done it. And so I guess it's that result of talking to people, and they have since become very much our advocates and become our Full-Time Lives community, because they so wish that people who are coming down the path behind them could actually tap into the stories and the knowledge that they have around how they've managed to create the lives that they're leading today. And a lot of people would often, particularly women, would talk about, oh gosh, you know, when I think about the last major change in my life, it was when I had my first child. So that was a major step, going from being, say, someone who was very successful in their work to then having to play second fiddle to a child, a baby. And but then it was the support network they had through things like Mothers Group that really enabled them to make that transition into becoming mothers. And you know, everyone has a different model of parenthood. In the same way with retirement, everyone's got a different model for how it's going to be meaningful and healthy and connected for you. And it's, you know, it's doing the work, but then it's also about being inspired and getting some tips and tools and ways to really think about what's ahead of you so that you're prepared. So I guess it's often when people are working with someone who's a trusted advisor, like a financial planner, who is in that position to help people think about their future and their future selves. And it just really made sense for me to work with financial planners like Tim, to be partners in these professionals' journey to that next chapter in their lives, to really think about all aspects, not just the tangible aspects like, you know, what am I going to do for work and how many days am I going to reduce to, and the financial aspect, but then all the other aspects of, well, what's going to give you joy and energy, and how are you going to feel like you're connected to your community, how are you going to feel like you've got things to look forward to that are really meaningful to you, that tap into your strengths and your passion, and you'll continue to make a big difference, even if it's not necessarily full-time paid work. Tim, I know that... Go ahead, Tim. Tim, a lot of things that we've talked about over the years is the study tours that I've taken in like really looking into positive examples of how people can make that transition from full-time work to healthy living and healthy aging. Yeah. I know that one of the things that you love about the research that I've taken away from different parts of the world are the insights that I've taken from the blue zones. So for those of you who don't know what the blue zones are, there's 7 different regions around the world. It used to be 5 and now it's 7, where they are pretty much the role model for where people lead long, healthy, happy lives. And there's 9 common factors. And I'd say that probably the thing that Tim and I focus on the most would be 2 of those factors. One is to have a sense of purpose. And the second thing would be that social engagement. So social wellness has been one of those things that you can actually work on no matter what stage of your life you're at. And that's why Tim and I are just so passionate about getting people to consider that as a part of their planning, even if they're years or even decades away from retirement, because it takes time. Would you agree, Tim, that it's an underrated factor?
Yeah, absolutely. I think most of the advisors that are watching this would have had experience with, probably doing a great job for their clients leading into that retirement phase, only to see that client really fall in a bit of a hole as soon as they finished work. Maybe they did finish those jobs that they always wanted to do around the house for the first 6 months, and then that bit of depression starts to set in or something like that. So what I have loved about Nat's program and her insights are so, they're not just things that have been thought up along the way. I mean, as she said, she's interviewed hundreds of people and she works with people ongoing, and they really open up to her. Is being able to play that parallel role, so to be able to help our clients financially, and then in parallel to be able to give them tools and resources that can help them plan those other life aspects of what's ahead and help them prepare for that, just makes the whole journey for them and for us like far more rewarding and something that they can really work on. So it's a bit of a team effort with yourself and your client, and then I think having the backing of Nat's great knowledge.
I think one of the things that we've realised over the course of working with this segment of customers that have so many complex changes that are happening in their lives, whether it's relationships and family units changing as their adult children are moving out of home and becoming more independent, and relationship changes with their partners, and health and work, and everything's changing around them, which makes it really hard to pinpoint exactly what to do. And what I realized in bringing groups of people together and getting people to talk about some of these challenges, so that it normalizes the fact that everyone's facing these challenges. But inevitably, the sorts of things that come out of these discussions are that feeling of feeling stuck. The words of one of our community members is, "I feel shackled to my life." And then you get everyone nodding and going, "Yeah, I know what you mean." And it might be shackled or feeling stuck in, more areas than others. Some it's more about their work identity, some it's more about kind of wanting to evolve their friendships, but feeling like not really out there spending time connecting with new people who they can learn from or kind of look at them differently. So everyone's kind of got the different things that they're grappling with at the moment. But the thing that really reassures them is when they realize, oh, this is a really tough stage of my life, and and whilst everyone else in the whole world seems to be dealing with it really well, like they've got more wealth than they've ever had before, and they're about to face having more time on their hands, and it's something that most people dream of. But then so once they kind of start to realize it's actually quite normal to feel a bit lost. It's something that most people do go through, but it's just giving them that reassurance and guidance. There's some certain things that you have to work out yourself. You have to do your homework, but Tim and I can actually work with you to think about some key big questions and fun ways to make those changes more incrementally, as opposed to thinking like you've got this big grand vision for how your retirement's going to look, and then it's so overwhelming you don't end up doing any of it. So we like to think that we give them a bit of hand-holding, some tools, and in fact, one of the tools, Tim, you've been working with your clients is the cards that we've developed. Do you want to share with the audience how those conversation cards have helped?
Yeah, well, Natalie, as part of her program, has developed these amazing cards. I think there's 100, around 100 cards, all with fantastic ideas that people might want to, it might inspire them to do a whole lot of different aspects in their lives. So it's around your 5 areas, isn't it, Nat? They're pumped in those areas, I think. So there's some things about the community, about travel, about learning, and I think that's the inspirational part. And the clients really that we've used those with have loved bringing that to life. I think it helps bring their ideas to life. What Nat was tapping into there just prior to that about people feeling like they've got those resources available, but more than anything, I think it's about taking control. I mean, I think this is a stage of life where people maybe feel like it's a looming deadline. They're on that sort of walkway, like one of those walkways at the airport, just taking me to this looming deadline. And it's everything that we're doing here is it's creating a framework for them to take control of how this is going to play out. And what are the things I'm going to do and over what time frame? And I just seen the things like the cards as a classic example of, there's things in there that they may have thought, oh, am I too old to do that, or is that a bit silly to do that at my age? It's now putting everything back on the table to say, you're young, you're vibrant still, as far as, and we're seeing more and more of those clients. They're so resilient and so vibrant. They've got so many things they can still do, and it's opening up a whole new world for them, which is awesome.
Thanks for mentioning our 5 key ingredients, Tim. And for those who haven't seen it on our website, those 5 key ingredients are having a sense of purpose, or ikigai, the Japanese word for having purpose or a reason to get out of bed every day. And the second one is community. So there's been a lot of longevity research, including the Harvard longevity research that's been led by Robert Waldinger, around the fact that social connections are extremely important in our health as we age. And I guess that's very much aligned with the Blue Zones research as well. And then there's vitality, and I guess vitality isn't just the physical and the mental aspects of wellness. It also includes spirituality and connection with nature. And then the other ingredient is lifelong learning, as Tim mentioned. So keeping your brain stimulated. The world's changing very quickly, so for people to feel valued and be able to contribute their knowledge, you've also got to understand the external factors to how you can apply your knowledge and your wisdom. So we talk a lot about the importance of two-way mentorship and how you can give back, and equally, feeling really good about being able to share your knowledge and wisdom and experience with people. But you've got to have the context around other people around you and the world that's changing around you to be able to frame up your knowledge when you're sharing that with other people. And then obviously there's the final area, the importance of wealth, like knowing how much do you actually need to transition to that next chapter. And that's why it's really important for us to be working with really innovative wealth managers who understand that it fits in with all the different factors, and you can't just focus on just one thing. All the other things have to come together if you're going to look at your clients holistically.
It's the way you're saying that, Nat, I was just sort of thinking, because I don't think there'd be anyone in the room that wouldn't love clients to be banging on the door with a heap of life goals and aspirations that they are desperate to achieve, and be having that as a roadmap to work with, because in a lot of cases that's not the case. So it's just brilliant.
Yeah, and I find that people actually do need quite a lot of time to think about what is their roadmap. So for this is where the models really worked really well with you, Tim, in terms of drip feeding the templates and the content and the stories all packaged up on a monthly basis, so that people can sit with it, use what they've written down as discussion points with their partner, people who know them really well, let it sit. And it's not necessarily pushing them into asking themselves those big existential questions on the spot in a meeting, but they've got time to really apply it, really go and do further research to see if this actually is what they want. Because it's all well and good to wish things and have a big vision board and kind of go for it, But what we've found is that the people in our community say it takes them a really long time to actually digest and apply a lot of the big questions that we pose to them. And we just want to spark those ideas in the same way the cards are really visual, they're very tangible. And we also back it up with roadmap tools to get them to actually do something about it within a short period, not like in a few years' time, but immediately, like in the next 90 days. How are you actually going to sprinkle some of those ideas into your day-to-day life now so that you can be absolutely sure that what you're doing and what you're saying you want to do when you talk to your financial planner is actually the reality of what is going to be how you want to transition to.
Yeah.
Now, I think the other thing that's probably worth mentioning is that COVID-19 has obviously changed a lot for a lot of our clients, and and that's a positive and a negative thing. Tim, what are your thoughts on the impact of COVID-19 on the pre-retiree and retiree clients from your point of view?
It's really interesting because, and I've actually said this as much to our clients through communication in our communications we send to them, is I sort of feel like in some ways the younger generation are coping with this situation worse than the older generation, because they've been through crises before. There's a whole generation that just never knew something like this could happen, or markets could go down and all that sort of thing. So when we speak to the retiree or pre-retiree segment, they're really resilient in that way. But there's no doubt there's a factor that there could be some concerns about their certainty of employment, what's going to happen with my role if there's redundancies. If they're in their 60s, maybe they feel like they're going to be first on the chopping block or whatever. But I mean, in the longer term, I do think that, and we touched on this, Nat, during our chat last week, that the working from home situation that's going to change. It's been fast tracked. Different working conditions, more flexible situations, flexible work. All of these things that have been upended, really, I feel like might play into the hands of people of that age group, because they're probably at a stage where they may be looking not to work full time anyway, and they may start to have a couple of small jobs, or there's going to be endless possibilities there.
So you're saying that in many ways COVID-19 has accelerated people towards redesigning their lifestyles, like the circumstances have pushed them to really think about what's important to them.
Absolutely.
And
I think
they're doing it.
I think they will end up doing it. I mean, obviously the finances play a role there too. If they feel like they really needed to get those last full years of income in to make it happen, that might be a stress for them. But there are a lot of people in all of the advisors' books of clients where the finances are already sort of okay, and maybe this could be more of a lifestyle decision and an opportunity to redesign what they're doing. And then I think one of the other things we've chatted on that again through your learnings that you've taught us is, and we've started throwing these concepts to our clients now. What about if you worked part-time, but you work part-time for longer? So rather than working full-time to your mid-60s or late 60s, or dropping a day here or there, what about if you worked 80% all the way through? Like, these are the types of discussions that people can be really open about, because they may only want 1 or 2 days off a week. And if we can model different scenarios, that might play into that as well.
And where it becomes interesting for full-time lives is, what are they going to do with that extra day in their lives? So, and this is where we can provide guidance in helping them think about, well, yeah, it's an incredibly valuable 1 day a week. Don't squander it, because you don't want to look back and go, well, my life's really not that different. I just work fewer days. because I guess that we're living longer to potentially 100 years, it is really important to look at work and the stages of your life in terms of multiple stages. So the concept that's in all the writings about 100-year life is this concept of a multi-stage life. Now, I don't think there's that many people in the baby boomer or Gen X generation who are necessarily thinking about intentionally leading and designing a multi-stage life, which means to not just have the traditional model of studying, working, and then retiring over the course of a whole lifetime. It's actually cycling through all of that over a number of years so that you're actually pausing and resetting and reevaluating and reskilling in order to set yourself up for a whole new career, applying what you're really good at and what you're passionate about to reinvent yourself for whatever's happening in the world, and then not necessarily continue for the rest of your life or for decades, but then pausing once again to rejuvenate and rest and relearn, reskill, be ready for the next chapter. So it's really being fit for the future for a much longer life. And so I guess in many ways, COVID-19 has made every single person, no matter where they're at on their journey, to reset collectively. And that's made everyone stop and pause and think, well, how do I want to play a role in shaping where the world's going whenever we do come out of a COVID lockdown and be able to do normal things? I don't think we're going to go backwards in terms of how life used to be. We might take elements of what we really liked and what we really enjoyed from that stage of our lives, but it's also thinking about, well, how do I want to intentionally lead my day-to-day lifestyle? And, you know, and that's exciting to have given people time to lead a slow life, to really think about things. And I think certainly a lot of people in our community have reset their plans because they realize, actually, I don't feel ready for retirement. I actually really enjoy the company of people around me. So it might be slowing down that transition to retirement, or it might well be, okay, if I'm going to take a day off in terms of that transition to retirement, I want to make sure that that one day is doing something more purposeful, whether it's a side hustle, it's skill volunteering, but having some control over what they do and being intentional about what they do on those days off to make that transition.
Yeah, and I think one of the things I was going to say about during this time, Nat, was if we haven't explained it explicitly, Nat provides content as well for us to share with our clients each month. And because, Nat, you write from, you know, really from the context of a pre-retiree or a retiree, I think a lot of the way you write and the topics you write about resonate with people so much. So we've actually had a lot of feedback, even just from the people who are already retired, about some of the things you've talked about, you know, like about the importance of social connecting and ideas around that and that type of thing. It's been of huge value to our clients and great for us that we could support them in that way as well. So that was probably an slightly unintended, unintended benefit.
It's a topic I'm really passionate about, and you know, I think that particular piece of content that we sent out to your clients was social connections, not social distancing.
Yeah.
And I feel like it was a bit of a sign at the beginning of my year. It was marked by my study tour to Japan, the last time I left the country, and I spent a whole month going around to regional parts of Japan to really try and understand how do the regional communities away from the big cities with small populations, how do they survive and thrive economically as well as from a health perspective. And what became loud and clear from, you know, chatting with the locals in those towns and talking to leaders in those communities is how important that social structure is in terms of those groups and communities really rallying behind each other and supporting each other through all kinds of natural disasters, through feast and famine, war. Those communities who've got, you know, a specialty where historical and cultural skills have been passed down, but yet they've remained very successful financially in those towns, where you actually get lots of people moving into the town, or people from different parts of Japan or around the world coming and visiting. You know, one of those things that is really interesting to observe is that those communities are really resilient, and they have all kinds of beautiful stories about how they've survived, you know, these really dark periods of you know, over the centuries, things that they've had to experience. But then they're still smiling, they're still engaged with the wider world, and still very curious about each other's lives, and you know, want to be there for each other. And I guess COVID-19 has really made me think about Australian society and how we really need to adapt to take on a lot of those common factors from those really successful regional towns in Japan, because there's nothing to stop us from rallying behind each other and really getting to know our neighbours and those around us, whether it's in our physical neighbourhoods or our more metaphorical digital tribes that we're connected to. There's so many different ways you can still achieve that same thing of feeling that sense of belonging and being helpful and using your skills to contribute to make the world a better place. It's highly satisfying, and I think that is the future of how modern retirement's going to look like, given that we're all a lot healthier and living longer lives. Yeah. It's actually thinking, well, what am I going to do with my time, and how am I going to be part of this world? And those are really interesting questions, and I guess to a degree, that is my personal ikigai. That's what gets me out of bed every day, by thinking about how do we translate and take all the goodness of the scientific research behind healthy aging, the great examples around intergenerational communities that are thriving in other parts of the world, and put it into a modern context where individuals as well as business leaders, like financial advisors who play a really important role in their communities for their clients, who can support people through this transition to a new type of retirement. I find it, you know, an incredible opportunity at this point in time for everyone, as they're going through this reset, to think about how we can service retirees and pre-retirees and get them to think differently about their future.
Brilliant, Nat.
Yeah. Tim, I guess speaking of impact and value, is there anything that you can share in terms of where you think that there's a great opportunity in this kind of COVID kind of circumstance?
Look, no, I just really think that, how do I put it? We're as advisors, we're comfortable in a lot of ways talking about the areas that we're really knowledgeable in. I think that the main value from this, I think, is more. We've had more reviews and annual sit downs with people than ever before, and it's been just good timing for us that we've started using your resources at this same time, because we're using those readiness indicator and that type of thing to help people think about those other aspects. So I just think it's been a great time for people that no doubt in a lot of reflection mode there, and to be able to be helping provide that, I guess, the resources that, you know, a starting point for the discussion to work in with the financial discussion has been awesome.
Excellent, good to hear. So the transition readiness quiz that Tim has just mentioned is a quiz that we created, and it's based on the 5 key ingredients, and it just gets pre-retirees to think, how ready are they in each of those 5 areas? And they get a score, and the indicator is basically a visual chart that Tim embeds in his report so that people can actually see in relative terms which area that should they focus the most on, and then they get an ebook that gives them some guidance as to how to think about that particular area. Well, that's all we have time for, guys. We've really enjoyed talking to you all. Thank you, Tim, for being here and sharing your side of the story in terms of how it's been working with Full-Time Lives. For those of you in the audience who'd like to stay in touch, please come and visit our website, www.fulltimelives.com. Go and explore a lot of the things that Tim and I have talked about today, like the quiz, the cards, and our starter kit to help you have meaningful discussions with your clients. We're also giving away 3 retirement starter kits, and all you need to do is go to our Contact Us page, drop us a line, and you'll go into the draw. So thank you so much for having us today.